Hello, and welcome to Michell Consulting's webinar series for our Michell University. Today we're going to be working with Infor FACTS, and we're going to be talking about working with purchase orders. This webinar is being recorded. It'll be available on our website. You can visit us at www.michellgroup.com to view this, plus our other training videos in our webinar series. So like I said, today we're going to be using, for purposes of demo, we're going to be using FACTS 7.7 for our demo. So let's talk a little bit about the purchasing system and how we can use purchasing system in our business. So from the main menu, we're going to go into purchase orders. And here you can see we have purchase order entry, we have receiving, and invoice receiving. So the purpose of the purchase orders in the system is to actually generate a document. This document can be then sent to the vendor. We can track this document. We can have requested ship dates. We can have ETA dates of when the merchandise is coming. This allows us to view during order entry to see what items are on order and ETA times and when they're going to be here. Once the merchandise comes, FACTS allows us to do a receiving. This allows us to bring the merchandise into our warehouse. At this point, the quantity on hand will be increased and the costing will be updated, as well as general ledger. The third step normally is that the vendor is going to send you an invoice. And we're going to get this invoice, and we're going to receive this invoice. We're going to compare it against the receiving, make any adjustments for price changes, and then eventually this is going to update our accounts payable. So what we do, if we look at the purchase order entry, we have a couple options. We have suggested PO entry as well as a PO entry itself. The suggested PO entry allows us to create kind of like a purchase quotation. It's not an actual PO entry. It's actually done through the system, so we can kind of determine when we're ready to create a PO what we want to do. It's also a functionality of the sales order system. If you visit our other webinars, you'll see this process in more detail. But during order entry, like if you're entering a sale to a customer and we don't have the item in stock. When the item is back ordered, FACTS will allow us to create what's known as a suggested PO. We can then import these suggested POs into our regular PO. This is a nice functionality because you don't want to create, again, during order entry, you don't want to create several POs for just one or two items. You may have 5 different customers wanting the same item. You don't want to create 5 purchase orders. So this allows us to do is during create a suggested PO. Then the purchasing manager is going to use our warehouse one. We're going to select our vendor needs it. We can actually do that. For purposes, we're just going to simply go in and I can add if I want. We can delete the information if we want. We can continue. So now you can see when we actually go into PO entry. So let's go here to PO entry. And then in here, when we actually put the vendor in the V101, it's going to ask us to bring in those suggested POs. So here we're going to put in vendor V101. Again, you're going to see some requested information from the vendor. And again, these notes that you're seeing are coming up are based on the views. We can determine here what we want to see. So we're looking at notes, and we're just looking at general information about the vendor. Let's move this out of the way. Make this a little bit bigger for us. And again, that's coming from the view. So you can see here in the view, I have turned on the vendor information display. You can see up here. You can also now going to see item and cost information. So as I'm entering items, you're going to see that information pop up as well. So again, we're going to tab across here. We have the ability of, let's move this down here. Again, here we can actually add our order. This is our order date. I have my computer set on January 1st, 2012. We can also have a requested date here if we want to go, as well as a promised date. Our terms, again, are coming from the vendor file, so we're just using the terms here. We can actually select the buyer, so we can track who's entering the order. So let's say this is being done by Ronald. Again, if we have a contact, we can look at our contacts. We can do additional contacts from the vendor. Here we can search as part of the relationship management. You can see that we have these contacts from the vendor. So in this case, we're going to do Jeff. He's our purchasing contact, so we're going to enter him in the system. So now what happens is we're getting ready to enter the line items, and you can see we have the option import suggested POs. So if we turn this on and we click OK, what's going to happen is we're going to see these suggested POs. And we have some criteria here. What it allows me to do is a few things. I can import the suggested PO. I can skip this and the remaining. Or I can skip just this one, or I can import this and all remaining. So again, personal preference how you want to do it. I'm just going to let it sit as default. So it's just going to stop me at every line. Now, obviously, if you had a several, if you had 50 items for a suggested PO, you wouldn't want to check them one at a time. But in this case, I can just look and I can see what's going on. I can make any changes here if I want as I go along. And again, I have the ability of making all these changes. I'm just going through each one, and I'm just checking them to make sure they're okay. And you're seeing that the order quantity is less than the amount backlog in the sale. And again, it's just telling me that because some of these suggested POs came from sales orders. And again, you can see here, if we look, we can see on this one here, we can see here on this one, we have the order. This is the sales order 1905. This is a line item on the order. Again, so it's telling you what is on the order. And again, we can change these if we want. So we can, let's say we want to order, even though we have one for the order, we want to just order 100 of them. So in this case, we can't because we're back ordered. So we're just going to go ahead and enter that one. You can see here that the cost information is coming up. Remember in the view, when we had the view on, we were looking at the item and cost information. So again, we can look at cost information here as we go along, and so on. So now you can see that these two came from sales orders, sales order 1905 and sales order 1641. The other two were the ones I just entered. You saw, remember, in that suggested entry, you saw these two that I entered into the system. I can easily just go ahead and enter a line if I want to just click here and add. Okay, I can go, and again, I can tab. I can pull up an item, okay, and you can see it's this one again. It's normally for warehouse 2. We're going to order it anyway. I'm going to bring it into warehouse 1, and again, you're seeing the information up here. So we're going to order 10. It's picking up the cost. You can see the cost down here, which is my default cost by the dozen. And again, I can enter a job number if I want to have this PO for a job. I'm just going to go ahead and say no to that. Let's hit F4. And let's take a look now at the purchase order. So again, very simple to enter this. We're going to be entering the information. You saw over here from the view, we have that we're viewing the vendor information. We're viewing the item and the cost information. We have some options. We can import the suggested POs if we didn't do it from the first time. Let's say we said no to that question. We changed our mind. Now we want to import it. We can import it from here. You can look at the header detail. So again, here, this is additional information on the header detail. And we actually do have a detailed webinar on setting up the order options for the sales and purchase orders, the entry options. So you can see that this is all the information available on the header screen. And you can see some of it is on the header screen up here. That's because in my setup, I can determine the ones I want. For example, let's say you notice the buyer is here, and the buyer is also here. If I don't normally enter the buyer, I can set it up not to have it display on this main screen here, but have it on my detail. Again, it just makes it easier for order entry. We can determine what we want, and we can add it to this screen right here. But again, this is all the information that is available. You can see here. You can also look at specific line detail. So for example, if we select this item here, and we can do line detail from here, as well as line detail from here. And again, you're just looking at more detail. what you see on the screen here is just a short version of what's on the screen, but here, again, you have more information. So you can look here at some standard information, that the two descriptions we have, the requested date, remember those dates we put in. We can look at units and costs, inventory GL table, lead times, and again, information relevant to the item. So we can see it here all on the screen. And as we see, we can add a line, we can delete the lines, we can insert a line. Difference being, if we go to add, we would be adding at line 6. If we want to happen to insert after line 3, we can select line 3, we can click insert line, and what happens is this new item here again, we're just going to go ahead and enter 10 of these. You can see that the new item that we entered, I-108, becomes line 3. So we just inserted it on that position. As opposed to add, just add to the next available line. And again, you can edit the line by either double-clicking on the line like this. You can see that I'm actually in the line information. Or what I can do is I can click the edit line here and fulfill the same purpose. So that's it. We've entered our PO, and again, there are some more options here. You know, there's some options. You see, there's view. If you want to view on orders, committed, and so on. Again, you can also do the add, insert, and delete lines from here, as well as down here. So we're going to click done. Again, we have our little note here. If we want, we can enter freight and taxes if we want. We can actually do an acknowledgement and a confirmation. We can print these, so we have an acknowledgement from the vendor, as well as the confirmation we can send to the vendor. In this case, we're just going to go ahead and click OK. And we're going to just say no. And this functionality here you see is from the relationship management. The relationship management, the RM here, what it's doing, it's keeping a note information. So remember, we created a contact person here. So if we go into our relationship management and we call up this contact, Jeff, or this vendor in this contact, what's going to happen is on the notes file, this is going to be tracked on a note. So we're going to know that on this day that we generated this purchase order 1365. So again, we can actually just create that done and save that in our notes. Okay, so now we've created our purchase order. We can view the purchase order if we want. So we can come back here, and it was 1365. And again, we have this information. We're looking at some notes that we have set up to read, and we're back into the system. What we're doing now, since we're creating a purchase order, we can do this because we're not really doing anything permanent. We're actually just affecting the on-order quantity. Well, once we create this PO, it's on order. We can go ahead and we can add it later. Once we do add it, it'll update the quantity on hand. So this is just a reference, something we can print and send to the vendor. When we're ready to receive it, since we have everything in the system, at time of receiving, we're going to receive this PO 1365. Let's see how we do that. Let's just continue on. Again, there's that note. So we've seen our entry, and again, if we want, we can batch print the POs here. All right, you can go and you can go ahead and select like 001365, and if we click OK, yeah, we can print those POs. We can look at our purchase order here. That's on the PO entry. If we go into our receiving, now we can do something. We have a receiving document print. What this allows us to do is just give us a list of the open POs, so we can use this to see what's coming in. Remember that we put promise dates and other particular dates. Or we may know what POs are coming in, so we just want to print a receiving report. So we can say, okay, this is for the warehouse. We know like this PO came in. So we're going to go ahead and click OK. And what's going to happen, we're just going to create this receiving report, which is just a copy of the PO with information. So again, this gives something for the warehouse to take a look at. You can see what came in. You can actually see, you can write in what actually got received and so on. You can make any notes you want on this. And again, you can see that the specialties are for sales orders on here. So this is nice to print. Again, it's nice to print for the warehouse. They have something to work with, a receiving report. It's not required, but you can do it. So now we have two things. We have receipt entry and non-PO receipt entry. The difference being, we're first going to look at receipt entry. Receipt entry means that we're going to receive a PO we created. So since we created PO 1365, we're going to receive it. There are, in some cases, or some of our clients that don't really create the purchase orders. Maybe they just call the order in over the phone, or the order just gets sent on a regular basis. In that case, the non-receipt PO allows us to, in essence, enter the PO while receiving it at the same time. And we'll also go through that one today. So let's go to receipt entry. I'm going to go ahead and click on this. And here what we're going to do is we're just going to call up the purchase orders that we created. So again, we're going to search, and we're going to go down here and find our PO 1365. You can see this one here, this NP, which you'll see too. Okay, this is the non-receipt PO that was also created. So we're going to go through both. So we're going to go and select this PO. And again, it's going to create a receiving number. This is going to be 1. And we have some options. We're going to assume it's going to be received. And again, there's our note coming out that we specified to come up. So by assuming receiving, we're just going to receive everything. And then we can actually select a specific line in back order. So if we say, you know what, this one here, we didn't receive all 10. We can just double click, and we can say we didn't receive all 12, we received 10, and we can leave it on back order. And again, the functionality is the same as you saw within the PO. You have all the options up here, all your views, all your options, same information. If at any time you make a mistake, you can stop the receipt right here and actually get out of it if you want. Here you can look at, again, vendor notes and item notes. We can see that there's item notes related to this, as well as vendor notes. Again, just some more information we can look at. We're going to go simple here. We're just going to go ahead and we're going to say done, no freight, click OK, and now we've done a receiving. So now if we go back and we call up the PO again, we can see here, since we've had that back order, now we're going to be doing our second receiving. So when we do this, you can see here that this is what we received. So we have the information here as being received, when you can see that we back ordered too. So now this point has actually been received. So in essence, we already created the PO and we received it and did the update. The non-receipt PO works the same way. The difference being is that we're entering the PO as we receive it. So in this case, we can put in our same vendor. Okay, but notice we're not actually we're not calling from a PO. We're just kind of entering at the same time. So we're going to go here, and we're just going to go put our item in. Let's say here. And again, what we're doing is we're just kind of ordering and receiving everything together. Okay? So for people who don't actually use purchase orders and receive from the purchase orders, we'll just kind of, you'll see the process is the same. It's just basically I'm entering the PO and receiving it simultaneously. Now when we go here, you can see that we have this one we just created, non-PO 15. See it? So we have that. And again, we can call it back up here, and then here it is. So those are the two non-POs. Okay? So again, that's what we did here, these receipts and so on. Now, because again, in FACTS, remember the batch processing concept that we work with. In FACTS, we basically work on the principle of enter, print, and update. So what's happening is we have an entry screen, like you saw the PO receivings. we haven't updated historical files yet. They're sitting in a batch mode. We're going to print a report, in this case the receipt register, and then after that, if everything's fine, we can go ahead and click Update. Once we click Update, what we're doing is then bringing that information into the system, updating historical data, and so on. So you can look here into the document fill report. Again, it's just another report that we can run, and we can see here what we are looking at. We're looking at both POs and transfers. And again, we're going to look at all the information here. We're going to select all POs and transfers. And again, it's just giving us a list of what's out there. This is a nice report to run sometimes too, is because what we can look at is, here's the transfer report, and the other one is my PO report here. Again, you can just look at, we have this information here. And then when we're done, we would actually do here the receipt. All right, what the receipt's going to do, remember, it's going to update. So if we go into this receipt entry here and we look, we had that PO right here, 1365, which again I have access to because I haven't updated yet. So I can make any changes to I want to the receiving. I haven't updated my information. Once I run my receipt register, now I'm going to update. So again, it allows me to go into the system. You can see that right now I'm working on January 2nd, 2012, but here is my current period. So my demo has my purchase order current period is June, my AP current period is June, as well as my general ledger current period is June. Remember, in fact, we can post the current periods in one period in advance. So we can post it June or July. We can't go back in time. So here for the date, just for this to be able to go in, I'm going to change this to June 15th, 2010. And again, here I can select all the POs I want, or I can select just the ones I'm receiving. So let's take mine, for example. Let's actually take 1365. Okay, we can also take 001364. We can just type min if we want. But again, we're going to go ahead and print this. We're going to click OK. What it's going to do, it's going to give us our register. So we're looking at POs right here, 1364, okay, which was deleted. So it's no longer in the system. And we're looking at PO 1365. Again, all the information that we did. You can see here how I back ordered to. Once I do this and I update this, let's close this. What we're doing is we're crediting 0 and we're going to post. So if we call up 1365, which is the B for back order, and it's a print to visit us at www.michellgroup.com to view this plus the others in our webinar series.